Hello everybody, my name is Patrick Kwong and I'm the tournament director of the Victoria Junior Chess Club. Today we'll be looking at a game played at the November Island Junior Rapid Online held on Saturday, November 22nd. Playing white is Vishy Kodali and playing black is David Iru. Both sides played extremely well and this turned out to be a very instructive game, and in my opinion the best game of the event. So let's get right into it. e4, e6, d4, d5. The French defense, where black often has a solid but slightly cramped center, and white plays knight c3 and black plays c5. So this is a mistake. It blunders a pawn after e takes d5. E takes d5, e takes d5, bishop e5, knight c6, takes, queen takes d5, and now white is up a free pawn. So going back to this position, black has some main lines. c5 is not a main line, c5 is a mistake. So the main lines here are the solid d takes c4, the solid d takes c4, knight takes c4, bishop d7, and this is the Rubinstein variation, an ultra solid variation for black. It's great for players who enjoy playing endgames, as black often grinds out a long endgame in order to win. After this position, there's also knight f6. The classical variation, which used to be the most popular. Play may continue e5, knight fd7, f4, c5, attacking this center, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop e3. So black is trying to take down white's center, and white is trying to support it while suffocating black. Last but not least, after this position, black can play the Winnower variation, which is considered by many top grandmasters to be the most topical and strongest line in the French. It's been analyzed a lot, containing a lot of theory, but the main line goes e5, c5, attacking the d4 pawn, a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight e7, queen g4, and castle. So now, basically, white is attacking on the king's side, planning to mate black, and black attempts to survive in order to take advantage of these two double pawns, which would help black immensely in an endgame. So white would play something like bishop d3, knight bc6, queen h5, attacking here, and black would play something like knight g6, blocking it, and knight f3. So white is attacking on the king's side, black is trying to survive so he can win an endgame. But instead, white misses his opportunity. After knight c3, c5, white misses his opportunity to win a free pawn and plays knight f3. And black plays knight c6, which once again blunders the pawn. So c takes d4 here. In this position, c takes d4, knight takes d4, d takes d4, knight takes d4, and black is more or less fine in this position with some natural development like knight f6, bishop e7, bishop d7, knight c6, and black will be fine. But instead, black plays knight c6, and white plays d takes c5, bishop takes c5, and bishop e5. And once again, the simple e takes d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight e7, and white is just up a free pawn. White can play something like bishop c4, bishop e6, takes, queen takes, and white is just up a pawn, and he'll do well in an endgame or any sort of position. But instead, in this position, after takes, white plays bishop e5, and black plays bishop d7. So here, what black should have done is just tried to get his king out of the center and try to keep this pawn there. So he should have played something like a6, bishop a4, and knight e7. This supports the d5 pawn and prepares black for castling. But black plays bishop d7, trying to break down the pin, which is an interesting idea, but it's not the best execution. And white plays bishop takes c6. What white could have played instead is just, once again, takes, knight takes, which is just a free pawn. But instead, white plays bishop takes c6, and black plays bishop takes c6. And in this position, white castles. So it's white's turn to hang a pawn, so right now this pawn is hanging. So if white instead played e takes d5, e takes d5, castle, and knight e7, now it's a roughly equal position and both sides are doing quite well. But instead, white castles, and black gets a free pawn by playing d takes e4. The queens are traded, white moves his knight that's being attacked, and black plays bishop d5, moving away the bishop. rook d1, knight f6, and this is just a string of long natural moves, as both sides try to solidify their position and get ready for the upcoming endgame. Bishop g5, so pinning this knight to the rook, and black counters with bishop e7, breaking the pin. a4, castles, knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and rook e1. So after this long string of natural moves, black finds himself up a clear pawn. So as you can see, black has 3 pawns here, and black has 2 pawns here against 3 pawns here, but black has 2 pawns in the center, so he's up a pawn. So here, after rook e1, black can play this really nice move, rook d2 with an excellent position, just attacking all the pawns, and even if white takes this pawn, black is still doing great. He's attacking this pawn, his rook will come over and come down, and he's just completely winning in this position. Play might continue something like d3, rook fc8, rook b4, defending this pawn, rook 8c7, defending this pawn, rook b3, f6, kicking away the knight, knight g4, king f7, developing the king, the knight goes back, attacking this rook, the rook moves over, knight moves back, and basically black is just in a much better position. Both of his rooks are actually very active, and at the same time, once again, he's up a pawn. But instead, black plays f6. After rook e1, black plays f6, kicking away the knight. So white plays knight c4, black plays f5, protecting this e4 pawn, and white moves his knight back to e5. Here, black plays rook d5, kicking away this knight again, and white defends it well. So here, black plays g5. So the reason black can't take here en passant is because, first of all, this rook is defending this knight, which means even if white had to take back with the pawn, and this is still okay for white. Second of all, white can actually play knight takes f3, which gets his knight away from the danger, while at the same time recapturing the pawn. So that's why black plays, in this position, black plays g5 instead, trying to undermine this. And here, if white takes, then black can take. So after g5, white knows he can't take or he'll lose the knight, so white plays g3, supporting the pawn. Black here plays king h8, and white plays rook d1 and takes. So this is a big mistake, as black hands white control of the open file, and he gives white much more counterplay than is necessary. So in this position, something like g takes f4, rook takes d5, knight takes d5, c4, because if white takes immediately, then black can take back. So white decides to kick black's knight first, so black's knight has to move, but black's knight moves back, white takes, and black plays knight h5, attacking this f4 pawn. Black maintains a significant advantage. Once again, he's still up a pawn, and his position is quite good. But after rook a d1 and taking, now white has this amazing open file, right? So right now, black's pawn is hanging, and so black has to play g takes f4. And now white has an amazing in-between move before taking back, allowing them to seize the advantage. Can you spot white's best move in this position? I would recommend you guys to pause the video and see if you can spot it. And here's a hint, it's a fork. Alright, so I hope you guys paused the video and you saw the best move in the next position for white. So white can play here rook d7, attacking this knight. And because a knight is worth more than a pawn, black has to move this knight. Black would have to play knight g6, and white can play this, knight g5, king h6, knight takes, attacking this rook. The rook has to move away. Black can play g takes f4. Black can take this pawn, but white is fine. White moves back, attacking and forking this pawn and this rook. And black has to take. White can take on f5. Black plays king h5. And white can play knight d3. Black can play king g4, knight takes e4. And after this really long string of moves, it's pretty clear that although black is still better in this position, white can almost equalize the position. So this is much better than what happened in the game. So back in this position, white can play that nice move, rook d7, but white misses their opportunity to equalize the position, and white plays g takes f4. And so black seizes back his advantage, playing knight d5, cutting the rook off, so now the rook can't access this point anymore. And after knight d5, attacking this pawn, white is forced to defend the pawn by playing rook f1. Black plays knight e3, attacking this rook and attacking this pawn simultaneously. And white plays rook f2, which is defending this c2 pawn. And here, black plays knight d1. And knight d1 is a good move. It forks the f2 rook and the b2 pawn. But black actually has an even stronger move he can make here first. And so this move, this knight d1 move, allows white to get a little bit of counterplay, which should be avoided as much as possible. So an even better move here is to play rook g8 check, attacking this white king. And so because there's nothing that white can block with, and white can't go here, white can't block, and white can't block, and white can't block, so white has to move here. And this cuts off the white king and makes sure that the white king will never become active, which is really important in endgames. You want your piece to become you want your pieces, all your pieces, to become active, so you can fight the opposing side, right? So after cutting off the white king, black can play something like rook c8, c3, king g7. And even though black doesn't win any pawns directly, he's able to activate his king and prevent any of white's counterplay, which is what happened in the game. White got a lot of counterplay and actually in the end managed to do very well. So after this rook f2 move, rook g8 is the best move, but knight d1 is a good move as well. And white plays rook d2. Black takes on the pawn, and rook g8 here is similar to the previous line. It would still be a great move. But black continues with his plan and plays knight takes b2. Now white plays rook d7. And now even though black has won an extra pawn, white has a lot of activity, and black needs to play carefully to maintain their advantage. So here, black, which is a little bit late, black plays rook g8, and this is too late, because now white can easily move his king away and play king f2. So here, this is not the best move, because it helps white develop their king. So something like knight takes a4 would be simple, and it's the best move. And although white has some pretty scary threats, there's nothing that he can really concrete that white can do. So for example, knight f7, king g7, knight g5, this is a discovered check. Black can simply play king g6. And white doesn't really have anything better here than to take this pawn on b7. But he still is threatening this pawn, so it's probably best for black to protect it. And then white can take on h7. So this looks terrible for black, or not as good as before, obviously, but it's actually not that bad, especially after knight c3. And now white takes the pawn on a7, and black can play check, forking this king and forking this pawn, and white has to play king f2, and black can take. And actually, this knight is trapped. And this pawn cluster is very strong, and actually black is completely winning in this position. There's not much hope for white. So that's the best move in that position. But instead of taking on a4, black plays rook g8. And white seizes this opportunity and gets his king out. Here, black plays rook g7, white check, and black moves back. And here, white makes a mistake and plays knight f7. So this is a mistake because white needs to try and keep all the pieces on the board, especially the rooks. Also, black's king has been stuck in the corner for some time, and it doesn't make sense to help black get his king out. So a better move in this position is rook d7. So here, if black repeats, that's great for white because that's going to be a draw. So black isn't going to repeat. Black is going to find something to play, like knight takes a4. And after knight takes a4, rook takes b7, knight c3, rook takes a7. And while white is still worse by a little bit, he might be able to hold on. So that was the best move in that position. It was best to play rook d7 and just try to maintain all the pieces on the board and maintain some counterplay. But white plays knight f7. And black plays king g7. White plays rook d7, king f6. Pretty understandable. He doesn't want to get discovered attacked or discovered checked. And white plays rook takes b7. And black plays rook g7. And knight d1 in this position, knight d1 check, checking the king, is a little bit stronger because it activates and saves the knight, but the move played in the game also works because everything just gets traded off. So white plays rook takes b2, black plays rook takes f7, and white plays c4, rook c7. And here, white makes a mistake and plays rook b4. So rook b4 is a big mistake because it runs into a5. a5 attacks this rook, so the rook has to move away. Rook b5 takes, rook c2 check, and in order to protect this pawn on h2, white has to play king g1. If white plays king g3, then this pawn will be pretty easily promoted. So white has to go back here. And white's king is now stuck on the first rank. You can notice that it's pretty hard for white's king to move away now, right? So that's why rook b4 is a big mistake. Rook b4 in this position runs into a5. But white should have played rook c2 because it supports the pawn from behind. However, white is pretty much lost in this position no matter what he plays. So white plays rook b4, and black doesn't see this a5 idea, and black plays e5. It doesn't really matter because they're still winning. Black is still winning in this position. And here, white takes, black takes, and white tries to bring his king into the action, but it's a little bit late, and also these two pawns are very strong. So black plays f4, forcing the king back. The king has to move back, and black easily wins these pawns. So it should be a relatively simple win for black, but white has some tricks left. Here, white plays a5, and the last trick for white that I think they should have tried, at least, is c5 check. So c5 check, and it's hoping that black will take, because this is a discovered check, so black has to deal with it somehow. And if black takes, then white can play rook takes e4, and now white isn't losing anymore, because this pawn will be lost very soon. Instead, black should be playing king d5 here, and then just take it the next move. So it doesn't work, but it would be a nice trap to set because there's not much else that white can do. So after king d4, white plays a5, takes, a6, king b5, king g2, king takes a6, king h3, king b5, king g4, and a5. So now black is trying to promote his pawn, just promote, and white is trying to stop them. Luckily for black, he's up 2 pawns, so this is a win in this position. This is objectively winning. Of course, what black could do that would be very simple is, for example, push this pawn. And now white's king is stuck babysitting these pawns, because if white plays king takes f4, well, now this is promoting, very simply. And obviously, in this position actually, black can even get 2 queens because this pawn still exists. So after promoting this, he could easily cut this white king off and have a second queen. And that would probably be the simplest way to win. And also, if white plays king f3, which is forced, so black doesn't promote, now black can play a5 and promote this pawn without any worry of this king moving away, because if the king ever moves away, then black's pawn will promote. But instead, black played a5, which is still a good move, and it's still winning, because even after white takes both of these pawns, black promotes his queen. Here the problem is that there might be some problem or some issues with white taking this pawn, taking this h7 pawn, and promoting his pawn. And this is hard to do for white, and if black plays correctly, it won't happen. But it's something to keep in mind, and it's something that did happen in the game, actually. So white plays h5, and black plays queen h1, which is a good move. White plays king g5, queen h3, king h6. And here, black has a really nice move to just force white to have no chance of winning, and it's to play queen g4 here. and this forces white to take on h7, and it's the only move that white can make, only legal move. So because white has to take, black can take on h5, and that's the simplest play. But instead of playing that, black plays queen e6 check, and white takes on h7. And now black brings his king over, and he has to be very careful because otherwise white will promote his pawn. So check, king g8, and here black makes a mistake and plays queen f5. So this was not really necessary because he could have just had a simple checkmate with king e6. And if white plays h7 trying to promote the queen, check and mate, and that's very simple, and it's the quickest way to checkmate. So in this position, queen f5 is not a good move because now, next move, if black doesn't do anything, then white will be able to promote really easily, and white after h7 is just gonna promote in one move. So black needs to do something, and black plays queen g5, which is a check, and this forces white to play king f7. The best move in this position actually is to play king e6, and it's still a win because if white promotes with h8 equals queen f7, and white is just checkmated, and that ends the game. So that was the best move in that position, but after queen g5, king f7, black is still winning, but now he needs an extra move to win, and he needs to be very, very careful. And he has to play queen d8 in this position, stopping this pawn from promoting. After king g7, king e6, white will be able to promote, but black has a trick up his sleeve. Black can play queen g5 check, king h7, and king f7. And surprisingly, white is not able to avoid checkmate in this position because there's just nothing that there's no checks for white that don't involve sacrificing the queen. And next move, black can play queen h4, queen h5, or even queen g6 checkmate. So no matter what white does in this position, he's completely lost. This was the last chance for black to win. Unfortunately, they missed this opportunity and allowed white to promote. So after this position, unfortunately black played king e5. And this is a huge blunder. It allows white to draw. And white plays h8 equals queen, king f4, queen f6, and now a draw is clear. After both queens are traded, it's insufficient material to win, and there's no checkmate for either side, so it has to be a draw. Overall, this was a really well played game by both sides. It was a very close game, and both sides fought well, with the tide turning back and forth very often. We learned about the principle of not trading pieces when you're down material, and how you should establish the importance of piece activity and mobilizing your pieces. Overall, I would say excellent play by both sides. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe you learned something new today. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the next tournament.